Hey everybody, Brandon here. Welcome back to another King's Indian attack video. Today we're playing against c6, which is like it's kind of like an invitation to play a Slav. So we could play e4 first instead of g3, which is an interesting option. And I kind of think I want to. So if I play e4, d5, I could try d3 if they go for those exchanges and just go into an ending. I don't think I'm too upset about that. I thought I'd, maybe try something a little different this time. And if d5, yeah, d3, knight d2. So they're going to go for the endgame here, it looks like. Which should be interesting. Let's play bishop e2. And knight d2 looks good here. I'm hoping to see what this bishop's going to do. Could play h3. Even rook e1 doesn't look so bad. It's a little bit of a weird move, but the idea of rook e1 is just to maintain contact with this guy. So when I play something like h3 or bishop takes, I think I should take on a6. When something like this happens, e4 is sufficiently defended. So you gotta watch out for this. Could play h3 here. h3, bishop h5, g4, bishop g6, and then like knight e4, or e5, attacking the bishop and the pawn. They'll probably have to defend the pawn, and then we can end up maybe taking, but then it opens up the rook against my h3 pawn, so that's something to consider. It's a lot of calculation, but it's necessary. I can also see myself going c3 normally, with another idea in mind. If bishop c5, I'll bring my king to f1. And I could have probably done that immediately. Yeah, so let's go king e2. If they take, I can actually just take with the king. Very comfy. And I'll bring my king to f1, because f2 is a little weak after bishop c5, so you always want to keep contact with your best pieces and pawns. Make sure everything's coordinating well. Like, at first it might seem like, oh, I might want my king on c2. But the thing is, with the light square bishop, it wasn't obvious that the king wanted to be on c2. Now, I genuinely think I can just go back to c2 and play something like f3. That actually looks quite reasonable. The king, I believe, is a lot more comfy on a square like c2 now than it was before. Just because there's no light square bishop to take advantage of the c2 square. And with both dark squared pieces, or pieces that can control dark squares, this bishop being permanently on dark squares, and this knight, if it moves anywhere, then it is in contact with d2. I don't really have to worry too much. Yeah, so I do like king e2 followed by f3. But the thing is, if king e2, knight g4 might be a little something. So maybe just h3 is safe. Knight c4 next, bishop g5. There's not really anything with rook d3 check. I just go back to e2 here. Never anything at all. Knight h5 looks a little strange. I think it's trying to take advantage of rook d3. Like, if I go rook d3 here, sorry, if they go rook d3, king e2, then they have knight f4 check, and then they win, or try to win, g2. I could just go g3 though, and all of a sudden there's nothing at all, because they go rook d3 check, and then I still go king e2, and I still want to go knight c4, and maybe even bishop e3, and get rid of this guy. This bishop on c5 is a little annoying. This knight is offside though, so we don't really have to worry about that. This feels like it benefits me a little bit. After knight c4. Bishop e3 next. Even if rook d3, just bishop e3. there is somewhat of an argument to make for something like bishop g5 followed by g4. Because I feel like if we ever get into an ending of this knight versus this bishop, we should just be clearly better because of their bad pawn structure on the king side, and maybe even, or sorry, on the queen side, and maybe even on the king side. Again, if some sort of knight move and bishop g5 followed by taking, if they have to take with a pawn, we can play moves like g4, maybe try to reroute somehow to e3. That looks very problematic for them. So they're trying to allow knight takes d6. But I don't think we need to play it immediately. I'd rather play bishop e3 and just continue to develop, because it is kind of nice having this piece on such a passive square. And I'm threatening the a pawn right now. Doesn't look like a crazy threat, but at the same time, it's not comfortable to deal with. You can't play rook d7 because then I can take on d6 and take on a7. I can also play moves like rook a to d1 and then threaten to take on d6. And I think that's what I should do. I should just play rook a d1 because now if king e7, this was kind of a trap I was setting because I think they had to play something really sad like bishop d8. Now I can just take this guy. And after rook takes, there's bishop c5, pinning the rook to the king, and this wins the game. So if rook d8, I'm actually going to take it first with the rook here, and then add another attacker, taking advantage of the pin, and we're not just winning a piece, we're winning a full rook. Or not just winning an exchange, my apologies, we're winning a full rook after bishop takes. Yeah, so they end up actually just resigning. That was a pretty clean game. So if we go into the ending here and talk about kind of what happened. So this ending isn't necessarily the craziest way to fight for an advantage, but there are some things that I think we do get in these positions. Namely, we still have moves like king c2 with this like c3 idea. And the biggest thing that we could ever get here is trading off these two bishops. Because after bishop g4, bishop to e2, for example, if they ever end up taking, the problem for them is that, well, now the king is always going to be safe on c2. So like that, in my opinion, is why they are okay. It's because they have this bishop. However, again, if they take, the advantage starts going up just a little bit, as you can see from the eval bar. And I have an inkling that, you know, the longer you let it think, the more it's gonna like white's position. Actually, g takes is a very dynamic way to play here too. And again, with the point that, like, if you take with the bishop, you might run into some knight d7, knight e5s. So it's kind of just a way to prevent that. But yeah, so like if bishop takes, g takes, again, you're not really worried about too much here. c3, king c2, and you can play these positions extremely comfortably. And with the bishop pair, this is extremely comfortable. And it's kind of funny that we just play bishop g7, and yet the top move is actually bishop h6, trying to get rid of our bishop pair as soon as possible. But as we can see, white definitely should have a slight plus here. We can bring the knight to e3, for example, bring the rooks to the d file. It's just very pleasant because our king is in the center. Whereas if we were to like castle short, is our king better on g1 or c2 here? Like, our king can't really be attacked, so we do actually prefer it on c2, just because, well, it helps control the d file a little bit. And so it's easier to bring rooks to it, and also whenever there's a king and pawn ending, our king is closer to the center. So for example, I think a big mistake for them would be to castle, and yeah, you just see like the eval just jump up, and there's a good reason for that. It's because their king is just completely offside. Actually, a better idea for them is to castle long, and that's why in a lot of these endings, castling long is the best plan. If you waste time with something like h4, they castle long, and they have a similar situation where, yeah, they can just put like their king on c7, they can just play like normal moves here, and they shouldn't be doing too bad. This is probably their best way to play, but understanding that these are the plans you have to go for can sometimes be a little tricky. So bishop g4, bishop e2, knight f6, knight d2, e6 here. Rook to e1. Rook to e1 doesn't look like it was too great. Maybe, yeah, knight e5 was better. And the reason why knight e5 was better is because, again, you really want these bishops gone. So I should have done something about that sooner, admittedly. But rook to e1, knight to a6. And yeah, this is kind of a problem move. Because although we're giving up our light squared bishop and not going for the exchange, it does ruin their structure in a way that's very unpleasant. So I played c3. I was expecting bishop c5 there. And yeah, king c2 is still okay here. I was just wondering if any bishop c5 would be annoying though. But turns out we're okay. We have knight e5 in the position. c6 is a little bit of an annoyance. Here, bishop takes f2, we can play rook f1, and we're still attacking this guy at the same time. We would love to play f3 here, so if they go passive with defense, we just go f3 actually. We don't really care now about taking the bishop, because now that we got this chain, whenever they go to g6, e4 is just like, it's like a cement block. It's not being touched because of the f3 pawn. So that's also a really desirable structure in these types of queenless middle games, as some may say. So yeah, I ended up playing king e2 instead. Bishop takes f3, and yeah, now king takes f3, and this is extremely pleasant. Our king is very well placed. There's like one check in the position, and sometimes you got to watch out that this check doesn't hurt you, but we were totally fine here. I played h3, which was quite prophylactic. Knight c4 might have been more accurate though, just because again you can meet something like rook d3 with either bishop e3 or still king e2 here, followed by even f3. Yeah, like rook back to d8, and then f3 is quite strong. And we're just gonna play like bishop f4, bishop g5, take over the d file, and we're okay. Because the best thing they got here is to castle. Even if like king e7, then bishop g5 is extremely annoying. If we try keeping the pin, they probably should just play bishop g5, and that's not really so great. But yeah, bishop f4 does look pretty good. And then the point is, if g5 here, we have bishop e5. And again, we just bring the rooks to the d file. The knight on c4 is superb because it defends our only potential weakness, which is the pawn on the semi-open file. But also, it's good to remember that the bishop is doing a great job preventing rook b8 in the first place. So it's very clear for many reasons, structurally and like actively, why white would be considered to be better here. So h3 instead, a bit prophylactic, but I think it was okay. Knight h5, knight b3 was also fine. But I thought g3 was also good, because this knight's just offside, and g3 is a very safe move to make. The only thing that could be like, the only thing that is weakened by g3 is f3, which is not really something that I have to worry about because that's my king. I can always move it. And the h3 pawn, which also cannot be attacked like whatsoever here. And even if it is, I just play h4 and then it's defended. So we're all good there. So e5. Knight c4. Yeah, e5 was a little odd, because knight c4 becomes even stronger, which is a move I wanted to play anyways. Bishop d6, bishop e3, and yeah, I saw no reason to take on d6 and take on a7, which definitely could have been tried. I could have also maybe taken on a7 first, and the idea is after rook takes, I can take on e7. Or a d6, but this releases tension when like this bishop is purely passive and this is purely offensive, and it's still doing a good defensive job too, covering d2 and e3. Yeah, so rook a d1, and yeah, now they're just losing with king e7, but it's already tough. Like if you play something like bishop b8, you gotta just accept that you're much worse, if not already losing, with moves like knight a5 coming. Even bishop c5 looks promising as well. Just trying to prevent any castling or king e7 or anything. But knight a5 immediately looks like it's just crushing here. If you have to play something like rook c7, then you've definitely done something wrong here. With rook d3, rook d1 coming. And you can't even play king e7 or anything. Like, your only chance is to play something like f6, but Well, now you have to deal with bishop d6 as well. So that would not be good. Takes, yeah. And you can't even take b2 because rook d8 check wins the rook in the corner. Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting ending. I was kind of happy we got it. I think it's something that King's Indian attack players might not always go for. But it is something to consider because I think that white gets a little something, despite having the uncastled king. Just remember, just because you lose castling rights in some sort of like queenless middle game or anything, doesn't necessarily mean it means that it matters. Because it didn't really matter here. Again, our king was safe on c2, it was safe on e2. It actually wants to stay in the center anyways. So if they try to exploit that, then they're probably making moves that are a little dubious and should help you. Of course, every position and every opening has their exceptions. This isn't always going to be good. So do remember that and do use your judgment. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next run or video, game, if we shall say, of the King's Indian attack. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.